Hello, welcome to Tarot for Our Times. This is Sarah, your medium on the go. And I decided, because we're having so much thrown at us at such speed, a little over a week ago, someone else got killed by ice. And the horrors of that are just really, it's every day there's always something else. And I don't even watch the regular media. But it's we have, and then then the latest stuff that's coming out of the Epstein files is like I can be very cynical and I can believe the worst of things, but this is going even beyond the worst of what I was thinking of with this. So this is very stressful, and I believe that when this is over, and it probably will be over sooner than later, is that we're all going to be having to deal with the Well, I think we've already begun with the PTSD. Just hearing about what some of these young ladies went through is enough to give you PTSD just thinking about it. And so I used the moon card as the focal point, but I was thinking, it's funny, I went to the after tarot deck and I came up with this, and it was right at the bottom of the deck. And what this is, this person has proceeded down the road, and looking back at this, I would call this the PTSD card, because and it looks like a female. Yeah, this figure, she's gone beyond she's looking at both aspects of her personality, the tame and the feral, and standing under the sun and the moon eclipse kind of a thing. And she's near those the pillars of transformation, but not quite there yet. And I think as she looks back on this, I think a lot of this is the PTSD is looking back. So I think it's hard to see her face, but I would say just from her posture, she looks pretty freaked out. That looking back at this past, I would say that yep, she's. I would definitely call this the PTSD card. So and the last one, the video I did use Judgment at Nuremberg, made in 1961, as the focal point, and I just haven't been able to get that movie out of my mind. As far as the whole political thing applying today, which is the national PTSD, there's certain things, sometimes when you see very good movies, again, you get something new out of it. And I always think that a really, really good movie you'll catch something in it you hadn't caught before that reflects upon pretty much where you're at and how you see the world right now. And I kept one of the and you can see it in the thumbnail that we have on the bottom photo, is a still of Maximilian Schell playing the defending attorney for the judges on trial, and then you have Richard Widmark, who plays the prosecutor. Now, in this movie, he's departed from. He was pretty much playing. He started out in film noir, and he went on to some westerns, noir westerns. But the thing is, that like the first movie that he made, which was Kiss of Death, he plays this very despicable character with the maniacal laugh, and the guy's a total psychopath. He does it so well. The first time out, he gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And the most notable thing in that is that you don't even have to be a real film buff to know that it's one of the more famous scenes of film noir. Is he pushes the elderly woman down the stairs in the wheelchair. And of course, we know it was very skillfully done because they start with her, and of course, there's a mannequin in the wheelchair. But I mean, it's just quite a departure from that kind of like the film noir villain and the gang leaders, that he's playing this prosecutor, and he's incredibly passionate about it. And I realized that this time around, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but I've seen it a number of times over the years, and I realized that this guy was going through PTSD. Because if you pay, it would be really, really easy to miss. Well, there is a scene where he does testify and say he was part of the liberation of the camps, and then they show the film, so you see as the audience what he saw, and that I remember seeing that as a teenager in the movie theater. That was I'd seen some photographs before, but to see that from the first row, no less. I mean, it was traumatizing to see those images that were real. They were not reenactments, they were real. So you realize that he has to put himself in the place of having been there, and that's what drives him, is that he's very angry. I think that a lot of the young men in World War II that liberated the camps, they just never expected to see that. In my readings as a medium, I have brought through more than a few times over the years, somebody's father, grandfather, uncle, who were part of the troops that liberated Dachau and the Bergen-Belsen, and some of the some of the other camps. And the thing is that they don't, and this is very common, they just don't talk about it, but it was horrendously traumatizing, and most of them never got the psychiatric help that, it's really necessary. And, so they dealt with it in different ways. Some were sort of like falsely happy-go-lucky. A lot of them drank too much. I even had one came through that he became anti-Semitic because which I found very puzzling, and which means this is not anything I would have ever thought of myself. This came through spirit, but he became anti-Semitic because those were mostly the people that traumatized him, and it's kind of hard to explain. So, I guess probably from my experience of having met some of these guys in spirit, I truly understood his character. And then he's going against the defending attorney, who Maximilian Schell did win the Oscar for that. And there's one very telling part in the movie where he speaks to one of his clients, which I believe is a Burt Lancaster part, and said he didn't want to be there. He just didn't want to be there defending this. But of course, as a lawyer, he did. And I know because my father was an attorney in the Army during World War II. He didn't go overseas, and he wasn't part of that tribunal. But he dealt with guys that were suffering from PTSD, and also the only thing he ever said about what he did in the Army was the Army was segregated, and there was a lot of stuff that was racially motivated, a lot of anger and prejudice and that sort of thing. But like the rest of the World War II guys, he didn't talk about it. But when he got out of the Army, he did not practice criminal law. He became a civil attorney. And it just occurred to me recently that whether it was a conscious or subconscious move on his part, I do believe that probably the experience that he had in the Army with these guys probably thought, enough heartbreak, because a lot of attorneys say that criminal law is where the heartbreak is, and they will go into other forms of law. So then you had Marlene Dietrich playing a role that she did not want to play, that went against every one of her beliefs, as the Nazi general's wife who gets executed. So it was very difficult for her. So she went through some personal stuff with that. I understand that she threw up every day after the shooting because it was really awful. And it wasn't, it was only what, like 16 years after it was 16 years after the war ended, and Hitler invited her to entertain their troops, and she refused, and they had a contract out for her. I mean, so it was awful. So it's so I believe, just as the war crimes that are the kind of the parallel thing going on, is I think that this is a psychological toll that this is taking with post-traumatic stress. And it's, as I've said before in previous readings, a lot of it is coming up from people having to, it's with the Epstein stuff, that people having to relive their own trauma of sexual abuse. And even people, when the E. Jean Carroll case came up, there were a lot of people who were victims of sexual assault by people like Trump, for entertainment purposes only, who have had to relive that and realize, maybe I need a little more therapy, or maybe I'm not so well from that. So I would say that this is a very very gut-wrenching time that we're going through, and I understand we're really working on the survival end of this. So the PTSD goes on the back. Well, that, it's post-traumatic. So while you're in the trauma, but then your past traumas are coming up, it gets very complicated. And but when people are trying to survive and pay the bills, that kind of gets put on the back shelf until after the fact, and things get better, and that they do get better, that now they have to go back and deal with all of this sort of thing. So I just want to do a reading on dealing with all of this. And I do have to say that I think that people seeing these movies about World War II is very important to realize that we're living in that parallel universe. But to be on the optimistic side, I would say that the comparison really is we went from 1935 to 1945 very fast. So we're more at the 1945. It goes very, very ugly. From 44 and 45 was probably the ugliest part of that war. But there was a light at the end of the tunnel for those that survived. So I just want to take a look at this and seeing what's going on with us and seeing what we can do. So I've been shuffling these cards up. So where we are now, where we are now is, Nine of Swords. We're all very worried. I worry just about as much as anybody else is. So we're very worried. There's insomnia where we're in the midst of a full moon, so everybody's been sleeping very strangely. And you feel as though that's not the Venetian blinds, but those swords are just pointing right to you, and it's a whole lot of thoughts going on at once. I guess the only comforting thing to say about this is that I believe we're all going through this in our own different ways. So leading up to this in the before, we have Judgment. This is very much, before they rise, they're very isolated in those coffins. And I like to say that the Archangel Gabriel is tooting his horn trying to wake these people up. It looks like he has his job cut out for him because, be leading up to this insomnia. They're I would say that since this is coming before they're lying in those coffins, they're kind of like awake, but they're lying there. But it's like they got to hear it's difficult to hear the message when you're really worried. So following that, we have the Sun, and this is struggling to see. This isn't a celebratory. This is like struggling to see the truth and struggling like, when are we going to celebrate when this is all over? What's going on? And the difficulty of the truth. So let's see. We have with the energy of the six of Wands, which is I would say that it's kind of like the energy in the opposition is that we are going to win in the end because all of this loses. It's 80 years ago is not that long. It's 80 years ago just simply is not that. It's not that long ago, and that we will come out victorious. So it's kind of like saying, keep the faith, that sort of thing. So let's see, underlying that's all of this, and as I say, I've been shuffle. Give this another little shuffle. Okay, so here we go. I always like when I go to the past, I kind of go like back to November 2025. Yeah, people got left out in the cold. That is for sure. And it was the fear of being, because you remember the first time didn't do so great. And once again, we're dealing with the thief. And you know what? I would say that perhaps for the first, for regime part 1, that I would say we would have had the 7 of Swords where, people are kind of in their tents and he's just walking away with all the goodies. But in the 5 of Swords, he's still, stealing and bullying. But these are the MAGAs walking away. It's like the Epstein stuff. It's like, the hardcore Kool-Aid drinkers, they're going to stick around, but there are people, there are the disillusioned. And then we have Judgment in reverse. So it's waking up to seeing that the rest of the world is judging us. And it goes back to the movie. It's like the whole, this is like the end. This is 1947 or 48, I believe, and this is like the last couple of years of those trials that began in late 1945. And the Germans are they're weary of all the guilt, but they're still going through all the guilt, and they're tired of the world judging them harshly. And we know that the cold, that's a big theme of this movie, is the Cold War is whipping up, which was interesting because when I first saw it, the Cold War was in full swing. So I would see people in the audiences back there having an understanding like, maybe they need to let this go. But so it's, it's kind of the weariness of being badly judged. So let's see. This is kind of opposing it, but I feel like drawing another card. King of Pentacles, the corruption. This is the King of Pentacles. Reverse is the Trumpian corruption. He is not a good guy. So let's see. I should use some smaller cards because I don't have much space. Okay, so we have on our conscious level dealing with this because, this is a multi-layer post-traumatic thing because of the past that it dredges up. So let's see, we have here on the conscious level, I think that everybody just wants this to be over, and don't want to give false hope, but I think what this is saying is that it may be coming over, because I'm telling you, you need a barf bag to watch to see that stuff that's coming out in the eps. And they said there's worse. The stuff they're covering up is even worse. And you can watch Midas Touch and all of those to find out with the auctions, and it's just totally disgusting. So I think people, what this is saying, the world is saying, we're done. We're done. We need to move on now. So then on the subconscious level so this is really interesting, because I was in the midst of watching Whimsy, and I got a new insight for this. Is that what she's saying is that a meaning of this card is, of course he's dwelling on the negative with the cards, but the two upstanding cards are saying we need to look at things to be grateful for. Now, we may not be living exactly where we'd like to live, but maybe just having a roof over your head and having some food. Maybe it's not the best food, but finding things to be grateful for and realizing you're not in one of those places. So on the subconscious level, this is a lot of and this is a lot of the grief of things that people have lost, like maybe they can't belong to certain clubs and activities that they did because they just don't have the money. But still, they have jobs and a roof over their head. May not be the best roof, but so that conflict's going on in the subconscious level. Okay, so in the past, I'm trying to move this along because it was a rather long intro. Okay, so in the past, we have the Four of Cups. Four of Cups in reverse. Boy, this keeps getting back to the whole thing of being very careful of addictions. That's what this is saying, is that there are solutions in front that someone may be ignoring. Cups in reverse always, in one way or another, always talks about this. So what this is saying is to look at the solutions, because living with any kind of addiction is not seeing the obvious that you can be doing. And I think this is in the past, where we are the Western civilization and the whole world is doing that. That's kind of a luxury that we cannot afford. Now, I'm a big believer in we cannot live with this stuff 24/7. That's why I watched an old Doris Day movie that was quite under total escapism. That sort of thing. Do that. Like, see a movie, see something that makes you laugh. If it's been rough, don't look at that Judgment of Nuremberg quite, that day. But look at, watch a movie, watch a musical. Do a little bit of escapism. It's better than, turning to drugs, gambling, booze. Okay, so where we are right now is we got the Tower in reverse, which is saying that things are serious, but with it in reverse, it's saying it's not that serious, but it's a warning to do not repeat the same mistakes, because you could turn it into an upright tower. But it is about setbacks that are not exactly, how do you like his shorts that I had to draw on him? Anyway, pretty much what this is saying is that don't be making the same mistakes. It's kind of like the triple Trumpers, what the hell were they thinking of? I mean, talk about short memories. That's like amnesia. But it's saying, like, guard it, and do that in your personal life. It's like, if you are going through some past traumatic stuff, don't put yourself back in situations and that that is going to bring that up, or that's going to put you into more trauma just to prove that you're not. So I would say right now things are serious, but not a total. I mean, it looks like it's a total disaster, but I would say that with the primaries coming up, and this is what because when I all of I like to listen to the IHIP ladies, and the thing is that I do agree with what they're saying about the Democrats. This is primary season. Don't go electing the same. Find your own Bernie Sanders and AOC. Those people are going to be coming out of the woodwork. So you need to go with someone who's saying, I will not vote for funding ICE, and and I'm not just going to willy-nilly, in the Senate, approve of these psychopaths that he nominates. I mean, that get out of that old mode of let's be nice guys. You need to get some. You need to, as I say, you need to get the Bernies and the Jasmine Crockett's and all those kinds of people. So what this is saying is, yeah, things are not great, but you have a chance. And I know they're going to fool around with the elections. They're already doing that, but everybody needs to come out and vote. Do not make the same mistake of sitting it out that you can't. And the primaries are really important, really important. Okay, so coming up in the future with all of this, and it also makes you feel as though you have control over a situation in which you feel as though you don't. Okay, so then we have, for the after, and this is interesting because on the conscious level, we had the world upright, but we have the after. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, well, then in reverse it's saying, oh, well, this is telling me that we were all happy when Joe Biden beat Trump, but they should have never approved of Merrick Garland as Attorney General. They should have said, look, if you want to appoint him as a federal judge, go for it, but not Attorney General. We need it. They should have, they get a tough person saying like after January 6th. So there's still some unfinished business because they'd never finished it up. So it's everything's kind of falling out of place. So this is really telling us a big story about really need to. Not make the same mistakes. And there's some loose ends that really need to be tied up. And we have to think of that as the voters as well. Okay, so in our hopes and our fears, we have... Well, that's good. The 8 of Swords in reverse. So... I think the fear is staying, the fear is like everything that's going on, but what really helps is to try to get out of the self-pitying and letting your thoughts go crazy with all of this stuff, and taking off the blindfold to what's really happening. Because if it's really, it may be painful, because a blindfold can be very comforting. Because the one thing that was very important in that movie about, Marlene and Dietrich character, and a couple of the others who said they didn't know what was going on, and I talked about that the last time, is that they were, in a sense, they were saying, okay, it's over, time to move on, and being in total denial about the fact that they had to face this and heal. And so... when you see this card in reverse, it's kind of like, okay, it's time to take off the blindfold. It's going to really hurt. But in the end, it will be beneficial, and we will no longer be a prisoner of this sort of thing. So, so the fear is of what is we are going to see when we take off the blindfold. But the hope is that when you face it, that's when the healing begins. So this could be the go to therapy card. You never know. Okay, so how we see ourselves right now. We got a little bit of a hint of that. How we see ourselves. Okay, how we see ourselves is we're just not the shining stars. We just are not the shining stars of the whole, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. As I said in a previous reading that maybe, I think then when I use Sunset Boulevard as an example of, the fallen star trying to get up on top where she should have just been happy with her retirement. But we're seeing ourselves like we're not the big shining star of the world anymore, which is kind of like how the rest of the world is seeing us. So I think it's like I think when you start to realize that you're not the big star, that you've had maybe you never were the big star, but I'm telling you, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. So with that is like maybe not, some people say, well, it's kind of a relief, and others will be saying, isn't that awful? Okay, so how others see us is the truth. It is the truth, and they are not shy about telling us, like, what kind of shit is this? What the hell did you people do? And that's a truth we need to hear. We're hearing it from all of Europe. We're hearing it from Canada, and we're hearing it from Mexico. Now, the thing is, are we going to listen to it? Well, our Kanky leader, of course, is not going to, he could shove that thing right in his face, and he's not going to listen to it. But the truth is out there, and they're telling us, like, boy, you guys really screwed the pooch on this one. So I want to once again push these aside and take out which one? Oh, take these guys out. Ooh-wee. My worn out coffee stained cards. So the radiant deck. So you want a conclusion. So we're aware of this, and so kind of what do we do about it? Because this is going to be big, because he could keel over tomorrow or go off to Saudi Arabia. And as I've said before, sure, go out and celebrate, do whatever you need to do. It's when he's gone in whatever way, for entertainment purposes only. But then you're going to have to come back and face the day. And this is a post-pandemic PTSD. Don't underestimate that. So there's a whole lot. I mean, as I'm saying, it's all very layered. So let's see. What do we got to do here? Okay, so this card on top says we've got to move forward. We do have to move forward. And the stars, I like the stars and the canopy saying that, it takes a spiritual, move on spiritually. And these guys are sitting... They're saying, well, we're going to be going. And I always say that this is a slow-moving chariot. In other decks, it's a fast-moving one. But this is slow. So it's going to be easy does it is the, that's the thing. Okay, so then we have here the energy with that is, yes, celebrate. But I would say that, and there's a lot of female energy, like, celebrate. Find the times to celebrate when when you look at your Five of Cups, you need to turn around and see the two standing up. So, but they're also emotionally supporting. It's not like it's the girl. I think if it's in reverse, maybe it's the girls' night on the town, and they have a little bit too much to drink and make bad decisions. But in this, I'm seeing that there's a lot of emotional support, and so it needs to be done in kind of a female kind of way. So let's see what we have here. Moving forward, with a leader that inspires, and that's the important thing. You want to get a leader that inspires. And I always think that little salamander, that's kind of like the spiritual thing. But what a really, truly inspiring leader is going to say, I can give you some ideas, but really the rest is up to you. I can make you aware of stuff, but the rest is up to you. So, again, cannot emphasize this enough. It's taking and I would say, it's taking the blindfold off and not having yourself tied up. So I guess if there's one decent thing that comes out of this is that if this is bringing up resolved issues in the past, go get some help for it, because maybe you were just kind of tamping them down, and all of this stuff with Epstein, and maybe if you've suffered financial losses because you got conned, then you've got the crypto stuff and all this sort of thing. So this is this is bringing up stuff that we haven't that maybe wouldn't have come up. So Queen of Cups she's sort of like the nurturing mother thing, but this kind of going next to this, I think what this is saying is that she's a little bit afraid to take the lid off of that cup for fear of what would be in that. And coming right next to this, it's saying it's time to face up to it. You'll be, what I see from her is, you're the motherly one, you've given so much to everybody else, but sometimes that could be a cover-up for some issues you don't want to look at. So it's time for you to take care of yourself, take a look at that so you can move on. Just moving down the line here. And then we've got, and when you do all of this, you'll find that you might start sleeping better at night, and that a lot of the things that we've worried about are maybe worse in our minds than the actual reality. But that's going to be at a different way for everybody else. So let's see. And the final conclusion is decisions will have to be made. It's really interesting because a lot of these cards have been here. She is covering up her eyes. She's got a blindfold on. There have been blindfolds all over the place. It's, the big message is to, I think we've thought about this enough. It's time to see what your heart says. Take off the blindfold and make a decision. Make a decision. I think a lot of us are like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do now? And you can get very, very stuck. So I think I want to pull one more card. Yeah, a lot of this is, I think what this whole thing is doing, it's making us look at stuff that we didn't think we needed to look at. So let's see, what do we have here? Okay. In this context, and now that we're at Embolic, the 1st of February, you'll probably be seeing this the 2nd, but what this is, I always see this as in this context as planting the seeds. To me, upside down in reverse, this kind of looks like the bulb that's under, that you put in the ground in the winter, and you'll get some beautiful tulips or, daffodils in the spring. And so right now it's like this is the time to plant that whatever you've planted and worked on, it will come to fruition. And I've been saying, along with some of the other predictors out there. I don't know if I'm a predictor or not, but join the other psychics in saying, as the weather gets warmer, things are going to really start happening as far as this. I think this whole thing is really, really falling apart. And the important thing is that you've got to take a look at this stuff and get realistic. And I know if you were a baby boomer that, like I was, that grew up in post-World War II U.S., that you did see people that survived the camps, and you ask your parents, why does he have those numbers on his arm? And they said, we'll tell you in a couple of years. You're a little bit too young to know that. And growing up with all of this sort of thing, and then a little bit further down the line and talking to some people that lived through that era, the ones that are still alive, that will tell you that you'll either remember saying, boy, this sounds a lot like the lady at the dry cleaners who said what was going on when she was a little girl in Europe, being Jewish and that sort of thing. And, the older lady that's now passed away, the stuff that she told you saying, yeah, this how, and so, I really see that. But the thing is that since we have the knowledge of this, and this is getting back to the judgment at Nuremberg, is that, it kind of crept up. They were on the back end of a pandemic and a depression, and they didn't have a modern point of reference. I mean, they could look at the Roman Empire, but I mean, there was no real modern sort of thing that was a warning. We have that. We're in an advantage. So if you see that there is the parallel between what was going on in Europe post World War One, I mean, don't be afraid of it, saying that this is an advantage. It's an advantage for us to know this, because we have a choice to prevent it. And I would say that all the people being in the streets, and poor Pittsburgh, it always gets left out of these, Midas touch and all these. They'll show Chicago and Cleveland and stuff, and they leave. But a lot of stuff's been going on in Pittsburgh. There was the nurses and doctors had a candlelight vigil for our latest shooting victim, and Mr. Preddy, and things have been going on here in Pittsburgh too. People have been out in the streets. Now it's interesting, they were going to gather outside of John Fetterman's office, but since they're surprised, so no one's more surprised than I am, but they found out that no, he's not going to vote to fund ICE. So they said, oh good, we don't have to go out and freeze our asses off now. So I mean, if he's not going to do that, I guess there is some kind of hope. So I would say that when people do make that, because I was kind of freaking out, but the thing is, we know what people didn't know over 90 years ago. And the fact is that there's still a number of people that were alive in those days, that you listen to them and they say, well, people ignored it, or they did this or this, so not to do. And so I would say what's going on now is a very good example of, well, they're not, they're not reacting the same way they did in 1935. And that things are, that the fact that we're aware of that is very good. So I do like to leave, that's a very delicate balance of leaving you with some hope, but without false hope. So it's like we've got to face, I think the thing is that what I've heard therapists say, and I'm not one that, working with people with traumas, is that they very, very skillfully help them walk through that again and take a look at what happened, but then you come out on the other side of it. So I think that this goes in your personal lives and what we do as a nation. So with that, I'm going to sign off for now. So bye.